So there are many folks who wanted to be here who can't be here today for various reasons. And so recording allows us to make sure that they can watch it at their convenience. And in this crazy time, for so many of us, our days have different structures, and it's really important to have that flexibility. So I am thrilled that you're here. This lecture today, or I should really call it learning, because we have an opportunity for it to be very interactive, is the first in a 3-part series that's brought to you by the Jewish Disability Inclusion Consortium of Greater Philadelphia, which is a consortium of agencies that Jewish Learning Venture brings together. We actually meet every month, and we talk about issues facing people with disabilities in our community and how we can work together to bring resources and awareness about advocacy and about important issues facing the lives of people with disabilities and their families. I'm Gabby Kaplan-Mayer, and I have the honor of facilitating that consortium. And I see many of our amazing consortium members here today. And I'll send you a link after the webinar from our website that lists all of the different agencies who are part of that consortium. Meanwhile, we know that in the pandemic, many of us are facing new and unprecedented challenges. And certainly families, all families are facing so many different kinds of stress, decisions, balancing, many issues that have really caused us to stretch and grow as families, and also to seek support at times when we really need support. And so our consortium decided that it was very important to have one of our topics be something that addressed what was going on for families. And we thought of our wonderful friend, Sonia Voynow. Sonia is a therapist in private practice in the greater Philadelphia area. And not only does she see clients as individuals, she runs wonderful groups called Surviving and Thriving that are for parents who have a child who has recently been diagnosed with some kind of special need. And Sonia also does groups for grandparents, which is so special because I think that's an area where very few practitioners have addressed. What does this mean for the entire extended family when a child experiences a diagnosis? And Sonia is also a mom herself of 2 wonderful kids. And I'm sure she may share about her journey and her experiences as I turn it over to her for navigating winter in the pandemic, or this beautiful subtitle for Hanukkah, Tending to Your Light. So welcome, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Gabby. So I should say that, as Gabby mentioned, I have 2 kids, and one of my children, seems weird to call it children, is a 22-year-old who, when he was 2, was diagnosed with both autism and an intellectual disability. So I'm really happy to be with you today. And I want to start, I thought about the title, Tending to Your Light, because it is Hanukkah. And this is also a time of darkness. We have less daylight, we have less sunlight, but also being in the middle of a pandemic, we confront a lot of darkness. There are so many losses and worries that we're dealing with and seeing all around us. And as parents of children with special needs, this darkness is just accentuated. The essence of my talk is how to access the light, particularly our own light that helps us bring the best of ourselves to others. First, I want to say that I'm not going to be telling you anything that you probably don't already know, intellectually at least. But I'm going to be telling you things that I think we tend to forget over and over again. And I should add, I'm also saying these things for me because I forget them as much as anybody else does. So and you can go to the next slide. Here's the central idea. You deserve care. Your child, your family, your loved ones need you to take care of yourself as well. So here's a quote that I love. This is a book that has to do with kids with Asperger's, but I just love this sentiment. As the chief architect and administrator of your child's day-to-day living and future, if you become overwhelmed or exhausted or overly discouraged, then you will become non-functional. It's a disservice to your child to do too much for him and not enough for yourself to keep yourself afloat. So it's that last sentence that really gets me. It's a disservice to your child as well, to your family. So I want to start by talking about the unique burden of special needs parents and how self-care easily gets forgotten in the mix. Having a child with special needs has been referred to as extreme parenting. I don't know if any of you have heard that term. I don't know where I first heard it from, but I think it is so appropriate. And so here's just parts of the burden that if you're the parent of a special needs child, you are already well familiar with. Let's go to the next slide, Gabby, thanks. So first of all, there is grief as a special needs parent. And it's funny because it's hard to say what we're grieving for, or at least in my case. But I heard a wonderful term years ago from the researcher Pauline Boss, and that term is ambiguous loss. And Pauline Boss used this term to describe the experience of people whose loved ones are missing, so they don't know whether they're dead or alive. But this term also began to be used to describe the experience of like having, for people whose parents have dementia. And so their parents are like physically there, but they're not there. It's this weird experience of loss. And then the social worker, Marian O'Brien, used this term to apply to parents of kids with autism. And it's a weird thing, your child is there, they're wonderful. And yet there's this grief that kind of comes up because you kind of come up against the dreams or ideas that you had about who this kid would be or what your life would be like for them. So grief is definitely one part of it. There's also feelings of being invisible. When your child has special needs, you just feel cut off from parents who are developing in a more typical way. It's almost like this glass barrier is there, and it's like you can't enter that other world. And it's hard, for parents to understand your experience. So there's that feeling of being invisible. Overwhelm and exhaustion, I don't need to tell you. You worry about the services your child's receiving, you worry about safety, you worry about the future. And there's also fear of your own, kind of failure of not measuring up somehow to what your child needs. So this is what we deal with as special needs parents. And then you add the pandemic. So there are even more areas of grief. We are all experiencing this loss of connection, seeing faces on a screen when all we want to do is hug our loved ones. I mean, I think hugging is the thing I hear more about than anybody else. And I think that when this pandemic is over, we will all be just in a hugging state for a month before we go on to the next thing. And there's, we've lost people. Some of us have lost loved ones. I mean, we're even longing to be together at a funeral. There are just so many things that we are missing. There's more invisibility, of course. We're all kind of behind the four walls of our home and this loss of connection. And then with overwhelm, we're all together. There's even more to do. I don't know, if any of you are trying to keep your kids behind a screen paying attention, but it is no fun. And then you have no time to yourself. You're trying to keep up with a job, and our other duties can feel impossible. And then there's fear on top of the fear that we already experience, the fear about COVID, worrying that our kids are going to lose even more progress because everything's on the screen. So this is all to say that there is a great heaviness with us, even when we're not consciously aware of it. And it makes sense. I mean, this is all part of everyone's reality right now. So the question is, can we see this stress not as an aberration, but as something that just makes sense? We're in it. And it's our body's reaction to what is going on right now. So the question is, can we use this sort of as a reminder, almost like a wind chime, that our self-care matters, that we have to be even more intentional about attending to our life? So I am going to talk about 4 steps that can really serve us in caring for ourselves. I know self-care is such a topic that's talked about all the time, but hopefully, we can all get something out of these 4 steps. So if you can go to the next slide, Gabby. So here they are. Step 1 is to pause. I know for myself that when I am anxious, I have a tendency to speed up instead of slowing down. So rather than flying from one thing to another, the question is, can you take a moment or two periodically every day just to be where you are, just to breathe, just to look around, just to pause? A friend's daughter called this pausing creating a space cushion. The idea that you don't try to cram in just one more thing, but actually give yourself a moment between activities. This is really hard to do, and I need a daily reminder to do this myself. And then second, to notice where you are, notice what you're feeling. We tend to skip over this. We don't really take stock account of how we're doing. It's kind of like we're saying to ourselves, I'm fine, nothing to see here. But there's a cost to that. And so there are a couple of things that would be really good to notice. Just notice how your body's feeling. Notice your heart rate, notice tightening in your body. The jaw and our shoulders, for example, are 2 common places where we hold our stress. Just noticing your energy level. I've talked to so many of my patients who are exhausted, and then they say, but I push through. And it's great to push through. But sometimes we need to be patient with ourselves and actually heed our body's call to us that we are just tired. Another thing to notice is the thoughts or self-talk. The other day, I realized I couldn't find my glasses, and I still can't find them, but I have an old pair. But I'm looking for my glasses all over the house, and I'm saying to myself, you are such an idiot. And then I just stopped and I thought, these are things that we say that we would not say to our worst enemy. But these are all things that just further kind of take us down when we really need to hold ourselves in a kind way. Just noticing when we say cruel things to ourselves. So pausing, noticing where we are. And then number 3, guess what? I gave you an old copy of this because I have accept here. And what I really want to say is, I really wanted to write the word allow instead of accept. Because to me, accept is just go with it. Whereas allowing really just makes the space for us just to sit with what's happening. Because a lot of what we're dealing with is so uncomfortable. We may be, often I myself feel things that seem very, very unparent-like. Shame, resentment, envy, anger. These are just feelings that come up, and they're part of being human, and they coexist with other loving feelings that we have. So if you can go to the next slide just for a moment. No, oh, that's not the next slide. Is it? It's not. That's it? Okay, don't go there yet then.
Okay, I think that's it, Sonia.
Okay. Okay, so there's a quote that I love from the book Far from the Tree. This is a book by Andrew Solomon, who interviews parents of kids with special needs. And the quote is, "Parents need space for their ambivalence, whether they can allow it for themselves or not. For those who love, there should be no shame in being exhausted, even in imagining another life." And I really hold on to that, because that is part of the allowing. That just knowing that all of these feelings can kind of coexist with each other. And when you resist it or push it down or feel like I shouldn't feel this way, it just adds another layer of suffering. So, can we allow ourselves, our feelings to be there without giving ourselves a hard time is the question. And it can feel really terrible in the moment. There's just so much sadness and grief. But when you allow yourself to feel painful things, it's such an important step to feeling better. It's kind of paradoxical. But somebody told me recently, there is no healing without feeling, that you really have to allow yourself to feel these things. So number 3 is just allowing. And then we come to number 4, which is nourish. And it's about finding ways to get care for yourself. So this brings up the question, maybe we can talk about this a little later. What is nourishing for you? Binge watching TV might be what you need at one point. But when you really notice what's going on and allow it, maybe you can come up with some other ideas about what really relaxes and recharges your system. It might be binge watching TV. It might be finding something that's inspiring, listening to music or reading something uplifting. Poetry has been a recent go-to for me. I've really been turning to that more than ever, I think, in my life. It's been very comforting. And it's also nourishing to do something physical, to go outside, walk around the block. Somebody in my synagogue has started a 3 times a week dance party on Zoom. And I cannot tell you how great it is. It is surprisingly fabulous. So I suggest dancing, picking your favorite song and just moving to it. And here's the good thing about nourishing. A little something can go a long way. So I'm going to ask you if you can try this right now with me. I mentioned that your jaw and your shoulders are places where you can hold a lot of stress. So I'm going to ask you just for a moment to, if you would massage the area around your jaw a little bit. So just give yourself, on both sides, just allow yourself to rub the area around your jaw. It deserves some love. And perhaps even rubbing around your temples. Our face holds a lot of tension. Maybe even giving your shoulders a little bit of a rub. That's great. And just sitting with that for a moment. Just feeling the resonance of that. That is self-love at its most basic. You know, also another thing that is very quick and very effective is breathing, which we do all the time. But to take 5 deep breaths with your exhale longer than your inhale.
Wow. I'm listening to somebody talk.
So just make sure that you're all muted. So 2 more things that can expand your light that I want to mention. First of all, gratitude. I know a lot of people give that lip service, but when you can really truly bring gratitude in, it's this little way of noticing that you are being nourished all the time. And here, I just want to try a little exercise as well. Okay. So I would like you, just to sit comfortably and think about something that happened in the last 12 hours that causes you to feel grateful. It can be a good cup of coffee that you had. It can be something very specific, probably the more specific, the better. So bringing that to mind and really taking it in, kind of reliving it now as if it's happening. And noticing where you feel that gratitude in your body right now. Just noticing what that physical sense of gratitude is right now. And seeing if you can even grow it a little bit. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. I hope that you were able to get a little bit of that and feel that. So there's gratitude and there's also giving. I looked at, there was that article in the New York Times like a week or 2 ago about giving being a key to self-care. When you reach out to somebody in need, it just feels wonderful. So just knowing that little things make a difference, just texting a friend that you're thinking of them can really make such a difference to them. And it also just feels in this time where we have no control at all, that we're able to kind of share that light a little bit. So the thing about the darkness and this dark time is darkness can really help us appreciate the light and the power that our light has. So in sum, stress is going to be there. And part of our job is to remind ourselves that to put ourselves on our to-do list. Just taking a moment, and it can be sometimes just a minute, or the time it takes to dance to a song. It really can make a difference. And here now, the last slide, here is a quote that I love from Dr. Thema Bryant Davis. It's written for women in mind, but you deserve care. When you grew up being a bridge for others, tending to your garden may feel selfish. Be still anyway. Choose you anyway. Sit with the discomfort of acknowledging your needs. You deserve care. So that's what I have. And thank you so much for being here.
Sonia, this is so beautiful. I'm going to leave that quote up for a moment. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I think it was an act of care to come and take this half hour to be with Sonia and to learn some awesome takeaways. I'm going to pay attention to my jaw and shoulders today, and I'm going to remember to just allow those feelings to be present as they are. And so we have time. If there's anyone who write a particular question or comment in the chat box, please feel free to do so now. And Sonia, maybe while we're waiting for other people to do that, I have one question I'd like to ask you, which is, oops, I'm gonna just stop the share for this part. I heard someone use a really great metaphor about the pandemic, which is to say we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat, right? And there are people whose boat is one of financial struggle, or there's people whose boat is caring for elderly parents and caring for that concern. So for families who have a loved one with a disability who are managing care, and online school is different and so forth. And if you're feeling like, you know what, my friend who's also doing online school for her kids, but they don't have any particular learning challenges, how can you describe what your particular boat feels like when you feel kind of unseen?
Wow, that is such a good question. And I think that it's always nice when somebody wants to know. I mean, you know, I think that one thing is people are so caught up with what's going on with them that they don't even stop to ask. You know, just to say, you know, that you relate to what somebody else is going through, and then, you know, talking about some of the things that are happening with you. But I think that question has really made me be a better friend, because I feel like asking somebody else, how are you doing? Because you never really know. I mean, I have friends who don't have kids with special needs, but then they have a parent who's sick, or their father-in-law is, like, you know, in hospice. So I think that asking the question, and just remembering to ask the question, no matter how terrible you know, how much you're burdened, is really important. But I don't know, maybe other people have answers to that as well. It's a great question.
Thank you, Sonia. I want to mention too that Sonia has an awesome blog and website. And Sonia, you told me at the beginning it's survivingthriving.com, right?
Right, that's right.
So I'm going to put that in the chat box,
Thank you.
survivingthriving.com. So if today's conversation inspired you, if you want to follow Sonia's writing, or even get in touch with her about some of the groups she does, that's a great resource to go. I'm gonna take this recording and we'll share it out with everyone. So I hope if you have other parents you know who might appreciate this or gain something from this, or you think could use a little nourishment, that you'll take it and share it out in the world. Sonia, I want to thank you for giving us your time and your wisdom and your energy. And I really want to thank everyone who's here today. And yeah, really. And thank my partners in the Jewish Disability Inclusion Consortium, who really fostered this idea of time for us to take a break in our days and nourish ourselves and come together in community over Zoom. So I'll send you the link out to all of those agencies with the recording, because there are wonderful organizations that can help your family. So
Thanks for being here, everybody. It's nice to see your faces.
It really is. And we have lots of thank yous for you in the,
it's wonderful.
And I'm going to hit that stop recording button.